In the last year or so, two Mario third-party crossover series suffered severe and possibly terminal setbacks. Firstly, we had the loss of Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, with Sega losing the Olympics license to Enway. The last Mario and Sonic title was released in 2019 and commemorated the Tokyo Olympics, though obviously real-world events and the unprecedented rescheduling of the event to an odd-numbered year makes this Mario and Sonic title something of an odd relic of history. Then there's Mario plus Rabbids. Theoretically, Ubisoft still have the run of this franchise, and despite sparks of hope's somewhat anemic start, with some aggressive price dropping, it seems to be doing as well as its predecessor. But with Genius creator Davide Soliani leaving the studio, and Ubisoft itself in something of a tailspin, it's difficult to see another Nintendo crossover being on anyone's radar in the medium term. Some kind of tweaked deluxe edition of the prior titles for Switch 2? Sure, but something new? Under the circumstances, I feel we could be waiting longer, especially since Nintendo's trusted relationship was with Soliani-san himself. Of course, Mario crossovers are nothing new. From Mario's own entry in the much-missed, by me at least, Dance Dance Revolution franchise, to the little-remembered classic Wario Blast featuring Bomberman, which was my first encounter with the Bomberman franchise and remains to this day a terrific title for Game Boy. Nintendo has often let the portly plumber install a T-pipe to other junctions. And they've let other franchises dabble in the crossover space too. Perhaps most notably in recent years, the Crypt of the Necrodancer take on Zelda, Cadence of Hyrule. But Mario and Sonic and Mario plus Rabbids were different because they were ongoing crossovers with the iconic characters of major companies. Now, it's not exactly like Nintendo sought these out themselves. Sega had been looking for a partnership with Nintendo for a while before Mario plus Sonic came to be. Sonic's creator, Yuji Naka, talked about initial meetings from back in 2004. He said, "I wanted Mario and Sonic to appear together, so one time I went to give Miyamoto-san a presentation on how I wanted to create an action game, which is co-starred by Mario and Sonic. It was in the GameCube days, and I took around 4 planners with me. It is a pity that the discussion was clearly it isn't necessary for Mario and Sonic to co-star in an action game, and it didn't become a reality, but Sega was able to get the license for the Olympics just at that time, so in order to make the best use of the license, companion characters appeared together. A little later, Sonic appeared in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. However, this too came into reality because I requested from Sakurai-san, I want Sonic to appear in Smash Bros. The Olympics is a bit different from my wish, but I think it's a good thing that children around the world are happy about them co-starring. But someday I want to realize an action game together with Mario." Given Yuji Naka's recent fall from grace, I doubt that he himself will be shepherding such a project, but to Oshima added, "I also agree. Previously, they were considered rivals, but when I saw them co-starring, I honestly thought that Nintendo acknowledged Sonic. Still, it wouldn't be an easy ride." When Osamu Ohashi of Sega was given the producing role for the first Mario and Sonic game and told to go and pitch it to Nintendo, he saw it as an uphill task, and Satoru Iwata later wryly observed, "To be blunt, the company foisted a bit of an unreasonable task on you." Ohashi-san tells the series' origin as follows: "I heard that we had been in talks with Nintendo for a while about doing something with Sonic and Mario. Then Sega acquired the license for the Olympic Games, and we were told to progress with a project for putting the three together. I was motivated to go at it, but at the same time, I thought it would be difficult to pull off. To start off, we wrote a proposal and presented it to Nintendo, but Shigeru Miyamoto-san said he wanted to decide after seeing something with Mario and Sonic actually appearing in the Olympic Games. Eventually, a good demo got them through the door. And around a decade later, the same story repeated itself, more or less, with Ubisoft." Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle director Davide Soliani told IGN, "The first time we proposed the prototype to Miyamoto, we only had 3 weeks and a half to come up with a playable prototype, because we truly wanted to show him gameplay. It was when Miyamoto came back, I'm impressed, that things began to move. And Miyamoto's team were particularly impressed at how faithful Mario and Luigi were, to the point that he was astonished that they never got their hands on Nintendo models in order to create such accurate likenesses of the Nintendo superstars. But things are very different now. Shigeru Miyamoto is still a creative fellow at the company, but he is much more involved in Nintendo's broader adventures outside gaming. Moreover, the status of some of these companies that Nintendo might partner with is quite different. Strange to recall, but in the mid-2000s, when Mario and Sonic was at the starting whistle, Sega had only relatively recently exited the console scene, and Sonic and Mario were seen through the prism of the still recent 90s console war, where Sonic and Mario were considered two sides of the same coin, the Sega mascot and the Nintendo mascot. Now, Sonic is still an incredibly popular and successful brand, but I'm not sure it bears comparison any longer to Mario in terms of the style and reach of its games, movies, and merchandising, which had taken on a much more unique flair. And the idea of the console rivalries now having long gone has also probably put to rest the idea of them being equivalent franchises. They are now simply just two great video game icons in the same kind of category as Pac-Man and others. There's still a great merit in a Sonic crossover just because Sonic is becoming incredibly successful for Sega, but I'm not sure the idea feels as faintly scandalous and therefore exciting and compelling as it once did. Similarly, Mario plus Rabbids had a number of gamers clutching their pearls and slipping into a swoon as the gauche Ubisoft minions-like rubbed shoulders with Nintendo's venerable mascot. But this was Ubisoft's game, and Nintendo were essentially just permitting it because it was an interesting concept. What now, though? Are we likely to see new Mario crossovers? And if so, where and with whom? Mascot franchises are much more obscure these days. Mega Man is a huge icon, but his sales are generally very low. It seems difficult to imagine a crossover with Crash Bandicoot or Pac-Man, and while Bomberman locked horns with Wario once, that also seems like a distant prospect now. There's always Rayman, of course, but he's another Ubisoft guy, and it would be a risky business for Nintendo to put its icon in a different series platformer, and I expect that they will look for a new genre if anything partnering with Rayman emerges. There are some franchises that do have histories of crossovers, notably Fortnite, but this also seems pretty unlikely. Nintendo survived a gun-wielding Mario with Ubisoft, but then the game was built by Nintendo fanboys around Mario and his world. Being a bit part in a juggernaut gaming empire is not likely to be Shuntaro Furukawa's cup of tea. On the other hand, if there's one title that's massive and particularly huge in Japan, it is Minecraft. If there could be a small Zelda cameo in Skyrim, a more extensive Mario mode in Minecraft could be intriguing. And it's not like Mega Man and Halo haven't set the precedent. Nintendo generally doesn't fall into the same rhythms as other companies, but there's little doubt that a Minecraft crossover would attract a lot of attention and has the potential to achieve what is always one of Nintendo's key goals with Mario, which is to expose the character to people who would not normally play his games. They may feel more sympathetic to Minecraft given the huge status of the franchise and its crossover appeal with Nintendo Switch. LEGO also invites these kinds of crossovers, and so a LEGO Mario full-on title would certainly have crossover appeal, especially as Nintendo are pushing their LEGO partnership, something I've covered in a previous video. Having said that, the game of the toy of the game might seem a little bit like the toy industry cannibalizing itself, but I could still see Nintendo and LEGO making a very interesting collaboration, especially given LEGO's history of collaborating with a wide variety of franchises in the video game space. The indie space, on the other hand, is a wider field, as Cadence of Hyrule seems to open up the possibilities considerably for what could be conceived. Sadly, Crypt devs Brace Yourself Games laid off half their staff a couple of years ago, and it seems difficult to believe that the lines of communication between the company and Nintendo are still as open as they once were. Cadence was great fun and deserves its reputation as a sleeper hit, but despite Super Mario Bros. Wonder's tilt for the musical in games, it's difficult to see how the Cadence gameplay would transition very easily to Mario, or at least not as easily as it did to Zelda. Also, while Dance Dance Revolution could suit Mario, it's just harder to imagine just dance players keen to emulate the Portly Plumber. Another consideration is whether these kinds of crossovers are still in Nintendo's interest overall. After all, they ultimately wanted to build their internal capacity to make games and make Mario themselves, so a pitch really has to be excellent to be heard. It always astonishes me that it took Mages a solid year to get their foot in the door to talk about a Famicom Detective Club remake. And that was a game as obscure and low stakes as Famicom Detective Club, with a company as well experienced in the adventure game field as Mages. You have to imagine that Nintendo's spam folder is full of Mario crossover offers, but if they're going to promote Mario, it might as well be Nintendo titles, and if another company wants a piece of the plumbing prodigy, they're going to need to have something very substantial to offer in return, either in terms of being mass appeal, or perhaps in giving Mario an exciting new gameplay opportunity. After all, Nintendo is still all about fun and bringing smiles to people's faces, and I think that probably helped Cadence of Hyrule get into Nintendo's groove. In light of this, the obvious candidate I could see is a Capcom crossover, given that Super Smash Bros. Is at a strange point in its franchise history, where it has produced its ultimate title, and if you take the ultimate moniker literally, that could well mean the last title, even if it's adapted and given special editions thereafter. And it's not clear whether Masahiro Sakurai, even if he returns to work on the franchise, is likely to be chopping the ultimate achievement. A Capcom versus Nintendo 2D fighting title would clearly not replace Smash, but it would be an interesting side buffet while Nintendo get their ducks in a row, much as Mario plus Rabbids held the fort for Mario RPGs, tactics RPGs anyway, before Mario and Luigi returned. Indeed, given how close Nintendo has been to Marvel in the past, even publishing Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, a Capcom versus Marvel versus Nintendo title, could be fairly seismic. But generally, I think Nintendo will be cautious about putting Mario anywhere that he might play second fiddle. Plus, Disney are notoriously meddlesome license holders. Sora in Smash already feels like a bit of a hostage to fortune for future versions of that title, but this does open the doors to chances of other multimedia crossovers. Clearly, Mickey Mouse and Mario would be an intriguing crossover, but since Mario's merch is handled mostly out of Universal, we would probably be looking at a character in the Universal field of characters, which limits it somewhat. Despicable Me is one possibility. SpongeBob might be a more obvious partner in terms of prestige, but it's hard to imagine those two characters sharing a stage. We've seen game characters make cameos, usually slightly ironic cameos, in films like Wreck-It Ralph and the Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers movies, but a proper, full-throated Mario crossover would be a fairly big event, and while I'm sure Shigeru Miyamoto will be open to suggestions and deals, I would guess that such a deal would take a long time to be sweated over, and I'm not sure any is likely to be in the pipeline right now. I'm sure we haven't seen the last of Mario crossovers, not in terms of films and certainly not in terms of games, but I do suspect that the sun may be setting slightly on this era of Nintendo, as they become a far bigger giant in the playground than ever before, and as Mario pulls ahead in terms of mascot franchise action, it's less clear than ever before what the benefit is to having this number of crossovers. Say Square Enix pulled a Ubisoft and pitched Nintendo a Mario RPG, which seems plausible given the success of 2023's Super Mario RPG and the fact that Square Enix are retrenching a little to work on surer hits, which must include anything with Mario on his current form. But even if the pitch was made, what kind of crossovers would we be looking at? Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest titles have new stories and new worlds each game, with a few notable exceptions, and while a bespoke Dragon Quest Mario mashup would doubtless send people absolutely wild, especially in Japan, a full-throated game in the Dragon Quest series dedicated to Mario would be too big a venture for the current team to manage on the side. Dragon Quest has had side games before, but having Mario partner with Slime might feel even less prestigious than the Rabbids. Another aspect is, does Nintendo need third parties to produce Mario games at this point in time? It might sound like a crazy statement given the number of Mario games on the market, but Nintendo generally likes to have 2, 3, or even 4 Mario titles per year, and even with his output, there is a natural limit on how many games can be put out. Let's say in a 4-year period, we could see a game each from the 3D Mario, 2D Mario, Paper Mario, Mario & Luigi, and Mario Party series. We could probably see 2 sports games and maybe a couple of smaller titles such as Mario vs. Donkey Kong or Dr. Mario. That takes us up to 9 titles in that 4-year window, just over 2 per year, but lower than the Switch average. All of which makes me wonder if it's possible that Nintendo could be looking to create some new Mario series in the near future to replace the ones that they've lost. Whack the subscribe button for more thoughts on the possibilities there soon, and meanwhile, please do check out this video on other Mario Universe characters due for their moment in the sun. Thank you so much for watching, thank you so much to my Patreon supporters as well, and I will see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.